Hey folks, Andrew J. Polk, host of Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Recently we had an interview series with both of the district attorney candidates for El Paso on the Democrat side of the ballot. Reminder, there is no Republican side of the ballot. No one ran in that case. So what that means is that the outcome of this partisan election will determine who becomes the next district attorney. They will be on the ballot in November, but again, there will be no one else challenging them. So we talked with both of the candidates, and here coming up we have the interview with Yvonne Rosales, the candidate for district attorney. Enjoy. Joining me now, we have Yvonne Rosales, candidate for the district attorney for El Paso. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So this is a race, as we've talked about before, that we weren't able to fully cover in the lead up to it. We had made other commitments. So for people who may not have been paying attention to this race, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, as you stated, my name is Yvonne Rosales, and I am a candidate for district attorney. I did run against the incumbent 4 years ago and came in within about 300 votes short of beating out a 28-year incumbent. So I decided to come back and run again for this particular election, and we are first on the ballot, so when you go vote, you will see my name appear first on the ballot. And I have been a practicing criminal law attorney for about 20 years. I started my career at the district attorney's office. I worked pretty much every facet of area within the DA's office, from misdemeanors to grand jury to felony court. I prosecuted a lot of. I was put into the specialized unit of the Haida Drug Task Force, where we concentrated on prosecuting criminal drug offenses, high-level criminal drug offenses, and that's where I ended up leaving, and I ended up going into private practice. I've continued practicing in criminal law, but now I just do criminal defense. I also expanded my business and then started incorporating different areas of law, including family law. And I've been running and managing my own business very successfully for the past 15 years, and have the business and supervisory management experience that it's going to take to lead an office of almost 200 employees and to be able to balance and manage a budget of nearly $18 million. So I have 3 times the legal experience as my opponent, and I have 100% the business experience than my opponent does.
And as we were talking about, the DA is not just for El Paso, it also covers a few counties in our region here.
Yes, it also covers Hudspeth and Culberson counties, and I'm proud to say that Sheriff Arvin West out there in those other counties is very much supporting me to be the next district attorney. I've also received the endorsements of the East Side Democrats, the West Side Democrats, and the Combined Veterans Association. It's really an honor to be endorsed by all of those organizations.
So what would you say are your main priorities, or what you would like to accomplish if elected to the office of district attorney?
We have to do a lot of policy reforms and changes that are going to help expedite and move the wheels of criminal justice to move along smoother in a more efficient and timely manner, especially now that the coronavirus has caused such a backlog in the criminal justice system. So a lot of these reforms and policies are going to give discretion to the DAs. We're going to get a lot of policies that really tie their hands as far as plea negotiations are happening. So we're going to give them the discretion to use their skills as trial attorneys and to make the best decisions in each case as possible. Some of the things that are new that I would like to bring in is to really advocate strongly and start prosecuting more aggressively animal cruelty cases. Statistics show that a lot of domestic violence begins with people who start out harming animals. So I know that we have a animal cruelty task force here in El Paso, but it's my understanding that they've been very much underutilized. So with working with them and making sure that we're on board on how a proper investigation would be in order to assure a conviction in those cases, I want to make sure that we work with them very closely so that all the hard work that they put into investigating those cases, we make sure that we find a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. I want to make sure that we can get those convictions since they've already put in such hard work to investigate them in the process. Another thing that I'd like to bring into place would be creating the first mental health unit within the DA's office. I'd like to focus on trying to get some assistance to those nonviolent criminals who may be suffering from PTSD or some kind of mental health disorder like bipolar or schizophrenia. You know, El Paso is a very huge military town, and sometimes our veterans get into some legal problems, but when you trace back the root of the problem, it all stems to some kind of PTSD that they've never really been treated for. So rather than criminalizing them and, taking away potential job opportunities in the future, we'd like to go ahead and see if we can get them some assistance, go through the rehabilitative system, and then see if we can get them out into the workforce where they can use those specialized skills that they obtained in the military. Let's not let those skills go to waste.
How would you see that working with some of the specialty courts that exist in our area, like the Veterans Court?
Well, right now the Veterans Court, it's really not operating truly the way it should be and the way the rest of Texas is operating. Right now, you basically have to plead guilty to the offense, and then that offense is never really expunged from your record. And that can potentially prevent somebody from being able to work in a government capacity that would maybe, let's say, require security clearance. But the way it's supposed to be operating is that once they successfully complete the Veterans Court program, that record would be allowed to be expunged, which again is going towards, we want to ensure that after these men and women have received the treatment that they need, is going to allow them to be productive members of our community.
If you're just joining us, my guest right now is Yvonne Rosales, candidate for the district attorney for El Paso. If you want to find out more about her and her campaign, you can visit YvonneRosales.com or look for Rosales for DA over on Facebook. One of the major policy points that you do make on your website is also about criminal justice reform. And you mentioned a few specific things like a conviction and public integrity unit and restorative justice. How would you go about creating those and implementing those if elected to office?
We need to have a couple of attorneys from the office specifically work that unit. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to have attorneys evaluate cases to make sure that whenever a defense attorney brings evidence to demonstrate that maybe a confession was coerced, that we evaluate that case and we make sure that we right the wrongs of the past. A perfect example of this is the Daniel Villegas case. You know, that took over 20 years before Mr. Villegas was vindicated. You know, he was found not guilty by a jury because of the fact that he was coerced into confessing to a crime that he didn't commit. You know, my concern is that any case that particular detective worked on in other cases with other defendants, that he may have opened up a can of worms where maybe those cases are going to be coming to our office and need to be reviewed for the integrity of those cases. So we definitely need to have that in place. And once somebody has been exonerated, we need to make sure that we work with them so that they can reintegrate into society. You know, Daniel lost 20 years of his life, so it's a process to come back out into society and be functioning at the normal capacity that the rest of us have been operating under. And as far as restorative justice, that's going to be an opportunity where victims will have more of a sense of empowerment because those victims that want to confront the defendant, and maybe a defendant who actually wants to show remorse and apologize for any harm to a victim, those both individuals would have the opportunity to talk to each other and put that case to closure and be able to move forward in a positive direction.
one topic that's been coming up a lot recently in terms of criminal justice reform is specifically in dealing with prosecution of police officers. Not necessarily a big issue that has happened here in El Paso, but how would you handle it, again, if elected to office, if we had a situation of something that was happening up, say, in Minnesota, if that did happen here locally?
Yeah, fortunately, El Paso is very different. I think for the most part, the public has had a very positive interaction with law enforcement locally. So I'm very grateful for that. But obviously, if there's police misconduct, brutality, and after investigation, the DA's office feels that we need to proceed on criminal charges, then we do need to do that. Just because you're an officer, you can't violate national standards of protocol. You cannot, violate somebody's civil liberties. It doesn't give you all-encompassing power. You have to use that discretion and power, handle it with great care and responsibility. And so abuse of power and police brutality is not going to be tolerated. If after the investigation we feel we need to pursue criminal charges, we can definitely do that. And I think a great way that the community could feel safe in that is by making the commitment, as has been the national trend lately, of elected officials, in particular an elected DA, not to receive any kind of police union funding. And I think that's a fair thing that the community would expect of a DA, not to receive any police union funding. And so I think I'd be willing to take that oath, like so many other candidates in other parts of the country have decided to do, is to not take any kind of police union funding for campaigns, in order to make sure that there is no doubt in the community's mind that any decision I make as a DA, whether to pursue criminal charges on an officer or not, is not tainted in any way by any kind of financial factor.
Of course, for the district attorney's office, one of the major upcoming things that is still, I think, a lot of local people's minds is that prosecution of the case of the August 3rd Walmart shootings. If elected, that will most likely be on your docket, as that case is still progressing at this point. If you're going to be the one in charge of handling that, how will you go about it? Will you be the one leading the trial, or what would be your way of coming about that?
This is going to take a team effort. It is not one prosecutor who can possibly handle all of these counts. It's a huge case. There are a lot of witnesses that need to be talked to. To be honest with you, from the get-go, my belief is that the federal government is going to proceed first. The appeals process is a lot shorter under the federal government system, and my understanding is that Mr. Esparza just re-indicted the Walmart case. So with that being said, I think that that's just caused a delay in justice for the victims, because of the fact that now you almost have to start from square one by adding the aggravated charges for the surviving victims. I think that caused a delay, because of the fact that now you have to start with your arraignment and then your pre-trials.
Referring there to the extra indictment that was added after the passing of basically one of the final victims of Memo Garcia, right?
Right, and understand I haven't had privy to see that original indictment, but my understanding is that the original indictment only called for the capital murder counts. This new indictment, not only does it take into the individual who recently passed, but now you're adding the aggravated. So the people that were there and were injured and are still have survived that, they are now part of this new indictment. So, but yeah, we're going to be ready to proceed. There are plenty of attorneys who are at the DA's office that have 10-plus years of trial experience, who have had the experience in trying capital murders. And so obviously I want to have the best team. I will be looking to see who is still at the office and who has that experience. And we're gonna handpick, at least 3 or 4 attorneys, and we're going to be ready to try that case together. I feel, as the leader, the CEO, so to speak, of the largest law firm in El Paso, which is the district attorney's office, that it is my responsibility to maintain communication with the public, So I will take a back seat to my more experienced trial attorneys. And again, by that I mean the attorneys who have 10-plus years or more handling these types of cases. We're going to have those people on a daily basis handling the trial. I myself will be the liaison between the DA's office and speaking to the community, and then speaking to the families and the victims of these cases. I will participate in the trial, but again, I feel that my role as the leader is to make sure I answer any questions that the family may have, and that I'm available to the public and the media in order to answer their questions that will be happening on a daily basis. That is the role and responsibility of the lead district attorney. Just like it's the role of Chief Allen and Sheriff Wiles to communicate information as to investigations and what is happening with major cases like that, that's how I feel that the elected official for the DA's office, that is their sole responsibility. And I will also guide them and tell them in the direction I believe that case needs to be taken.
Okay, very good information there. My guest right now has been Yvonne Rosales, candidate for the District Attorney of El Paso. Again, if you want to find out more information about her or her campaign, you can visit YvonneRosales.com and Facebook.com/Rosales for DA. So, Yvonne, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about this race and your campaign here today.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I just hope everybody gets out there to vote. Have a voice in who's leading this community.
Thanks again to Yvonne for taking the time to talk with us. There were more issues at hand here than even we could get to, and a whole lot more issues on the ballot, no matter which side you're voting on. So to find out information about all of that, you can visit epcountyvotes.com. You can also find out where to vote. Don't forget, early voting goes on June 29th through July 10th, and of course Election Day will be July 14th. So make sure you go out and vote, and again, stay informed on the issues. You can do that by listening to Talk El Paso live every Saturday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for watching.